I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this special edition of The Factor Election 2016. We begin tonight with more outrageous comments from Hillary Clinton as questions about her secret email server and falling poll numbers follow her everywhere. Hillary is unleashing inflammatory attacks against the GOP.
I know that there are some on the other side who are seriously advocating to deport 11, 12 million people who are working here. I find it the height of irony that a party which espouses small government would want to unleash a massive law enforcement effort, including perhaps National Guard and others, to go and literally pull people out of their homes and their workplaces, round them up, put them, I don't know, in buses, boxcars, in order to take them across our border. I just find that not only absurd, but appalling.
Well, this comes a day after Hillary compared Republicans to terrorists.
Extreme views about women, we expect that from some of the terrorist groups. We expect that from people who don't want to live in the modern world. But it's a little hard to take coming from Republicans who want to be the president of the United States.
Really? But Hillary supporters quickly doubled down.
So she wasn't calling them terrorists. She was saying, why is the Republican Party so out of date? And truly, I mean, if you look at what these candidates are espousing, no exceptions for rape or incest. I mean,
okay,
come on.
So no apology is necessary. No apology. Okay.
I mean, that's kind of ironic, Chris, don't you think, coming from the party with Donald Trump with such inflammatory, wild rhetoric. No, I think she's totally right to call them out on their extremism.
Well, Republicans were quick to pounce.
They won't call terrorists terrorists, going all the way back to Benghazi and even before that, but they call their political opponents terrorists.
So is this another unforced Clinton error, or is the former Secretary of State telling Democratic primary voters exactly what they want to hear? With us now, Jeff Smith, a former Democrat state senator from Missouri and a professor at the New School here in New York City. And from Tampa, Florida, Adam Goodman, a Republican strategist. Adam, I'm going to start with you right off the bat. That first Hillary Clinton soundbite, she mentioned boxcars. Now, a day ago, she compared GOP to terrorists. Boxcars, the first reference I think of is Nazis bringing Jews to their ultimate demise. Was this an unforced error, or was that perfectly placed by the Clinton campaign?
It's unbelievably unhinged. I mean, you're hearing the hyperbole of desperation from a campaign that's flailing in message and falling in the polls. She's upside down, Eric, in terms of believability. 6 out of 10 Americans don't trust her. She's upside down in terms of likability. And increasingly, she's going the wrong way in terms of inevitability. At a time when Americans want real and genuine, what they're really seeing from Hillary is deceit and dishonesty. And she's got to do better than that if she expects to not only be the nominee of her party, but to be a serious combatant for president of the United States.
Jeff, now you were state senator, but now you're a professor. You hear Hillary Clinton use the term boxcars. What comes to your mind?
Well, clearly, it may not have been the best way to phrase things, but everyone's making such a big deal out of the word she's using. What I think Republicans are doing right now is desperately, I think Republicans are making a desperate attempt to distract from their own party's rhetoric. Look, in 2013...
Let's stay on Hillary, though. Yesterday, she compares GOP to terrorists. I mean, that was outrageous enough. I've listened to that. I go, really? Did she really just do that? And then she doubled down even worse and mentioned, talking about a Republican strategy on immigration, and she compares that to Nazis.
And the Republican strategy on immigration to deport 12 million people is totally ridiculous, and everyone knows it. In 2013, Reince Priebus said, we've got to change the tone. He did the autopsy, the RNC autopsy of the 2012 election. He said, the one policy thing we've got to do differently is to do something about immigration.
Off-the-cuff remark or a planned comment? Boxcars.
Probably an off-the-cuff remark.
What do you say, Adam?
Off-the-cuff remark. I mean, can you imagine what that means to Jews, not only in this country, but across the world? Can you imagine what that means to people who lived through the history of all of that? It's not only insulting and out of place, it's wrong, but it really reveals a candidate that's kind of flailing and in trouble. And actually, you know, we've heard a lot recently, Eric, about the possibility that Joe Biden may enter into the race for president. I can tell you it may actually be the best thing that ever happened to Hillary, because right now, as she seeks a coronation to the nomination, she's doing very, very badly. She's going to need someone to up her game, and if she does not, she's not going to be ready for prime time when it counts.
Adam, Marco Rubio, we play a soundbite of Marco Rubio saying the Democrats can't even call terrorists terrorists, but they want to call GOP terrorists. You want to weigh in on that?
I do. I mean, this is the time, and whether you like Donald Trump or not, he's bringing it and kind of bringing it straight. People want straight talk right now more than ever, at a time when most Americans are kind of shaking in their boots about our inability as a country to get things done. So I think Marco is absolutely on the right track. Call things for what they are, and then let's find out what the remedies that are needed to turn this country around and go for it.
Jeff,
Hillary seems to be really concerned about choosing tough words as opposed to being ready to bring tough action.
And maybe, Jeff, let me ask you, is she using the word, comparing GOPers to terrorists? She's using the word boxcars, inciting the Nazi reference. Maybe it's because of the recent Q poll that showed that the most common word associated with Hillary Clinton amongst Democrats and Republicans is liar. Is untrustworthy.
Well, first of all, I'd say that Bill Clinton didn't have the best reputation for being trustworthy in this country, but it didn't stop him from getting elected and reelected and presiding over 8 years of peace
was
and
a
trust.
master politician.
We're not going
to say that you're not putting Hillary Clinton in the same category as Bill Clinton as far as a politician.
It doesn't mean that someone can't be elected. And he presided over 8 years of peace and prosperity, which you can't say for his predecessor.
Is she trying to change, like you are right now, trying to change the debate from her poll numbers and her untrustworthiness and her liar and all these sort of things where she's underwater into, hey, if she says things like terrorist and boxcars, we forgot about the Q poll that came out yesterday.
I don't think that's a concerted strategy. What I think is important to recognize, you can't beat somebody with nobody. And right now, the word that's most closely associated with the Republican frontrunners, Donald Trump and Jeb Bush, are arrogant and Bush. And since Jeb's brother left office with an approval rating about equal to what Nixon's was during impeachment, I don't think Republicans should be feeling too happy.
Adam, this is how they're good. This is how the left does it. They ask them a question, they bring it right back to something else. And we're on Hillary and her comments, and then we brought it back to Bush and Trump. Last thought, Adam, very quick.
Well, what we just heard is, instead of answering questions, they'd like to demonize. What Hillary's tried to do, Eric, she's tried to deflect, ignore, and attack. Right now, she's on the attack, and none of those things have worked. She better come up with something better, or Joe Biden's not only going to get into this race, he's going to be everything she can handle.
Adam and Jeff, thank you very much. Next on the rundown, new problems stalk Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail. Ed Henry on that when The Factor comes right back. In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, more Hillary Clinton drama as the negative headlines just keep piling up. Fox News has obtained emails that raise new conflict of interest concerns about Hillary's top aide, Huma Abedin, as well as emails that show Bill Clinton tried to get Hillary's State Department to approve his lucrative speeches in the repressive countries of Congo and North Korea. Meantime, the AP is reporting Hillary's trying to keep Joe Biden from running for president. Out on the campaign trail, Hillary Clinton faced the media, and while she didn't blow off FNC's Ed Henry completely this time, she didn't exactly embrace him.
Were you aware that your husband wanted to give paid speeches to repressive regimes like North Korea? Do you have any comment on these new emails that have raised questions about conflict of interest involving your aide, Huma Abedin? And finally, I wonder if you said there's nothing unique about this situation. You've said that before. Can you name one other cabinet secretary by their own server?
Well, let me answer one of your questions because I think that's what you are entitled to.
With us now from Minneapolis, the aforementioned Ed Henry, who covers the Clinton campaign for Fox News. Ed, wow, so you only got one. Yes, two. You're only getting an answer to one.
You hear that? Only one. That's all I'm entitled to. Interesting. I think it does show that Hillary Clinton is a bit still on defense about this email issue, about these new questions about the Clinton Foundation. But I think also, in fairness to her, it shows she's trying to show her supporters, specifically, this is the DNC summer meeting, sort of the party faithful, the hardcore Democrats on the left. She's trying to show them she's more combative and that she's going to push back against the media. She's going to finally tell her story. It's been a long time coming because these questions keep piling up.
You know, I noticed a different delivery today. I watched that speech and the subsequent questions. A little different. In the past, she had been I don't know, maybe a little cocky, a little arrogant. Then she went to a joking demeanor. Remember when she was joking about Snapchat, all those snaps, thankfully they disappear on their own. And now she's a little bit more serious. Is this a new Hillary Clinton going forward?
Right. And remember, after the Snapchat joke last week in Las Vegas, she tried to joke with me when I pressed her about whether she wiped the server, and she said, I don't know how to do that. What do you mean, wipe it with a cloth, and made that motion? And that backfired not just with her Republican critics, but you see this whole story in the New York Times saying that Democrats are really frustrated with her more than anything, saying that the joking has just prolonged the agony over this issue, and that the Democrats, not the Republicans, want to see her get this behind her. And so to your point, yes, I saw a different demeanor where earlier in this news conference today, she was saying, I'm not frustrated. I'm going to answer these questions because I want to deal with this. But then that might have been wiped out a little bit. Maybe wiped out is the wrong phrase when we're talking about servers. But wiped out a little bit when she said to me, you're only entitled to one question. 1 minute she's not frustrated, the next she seemed to be.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton, we find out today that I think we obtained an email from Huma Abedin asking the State Department to approve a Bill Clinton speech that would collect $650,000 for, basically an hour speech plus first-class airfare and travel. These are new developments.
Yes, two speeches, really. One that you mentioned, that $650,000, Democratic Republic of Congo, another with ties to North Korea. These are two repressive regimes. We should point out the State Department in the end said no go on these, but it suggests that Bill Clinton was willing to do these, that it made it to the State Department chain of command. And one of the emails says, look, the money's not going to go in his pocket, it's going to go to the Clinton Foundation. So also it raises questions about, what was going on in terms of all these paid speeches coming in under the umbrella of, it's for charity, but also the commingling of State Department aides dealing with the Clinton Foundation and the speeches. What Hillary Clinton argued to me when I asked her, though, in fairness, she was saying, well, the State Department was involved because there was a process set up where they would see whether there was a conflict with any of her work as Secretary of State. I think the very bottom line is it just shows with the Huma Abedin conflict of interest questions, the interweb, the ties, the overlapping roles, the Clinton Foundation, the charity, the presidential campaign that was upcoming, the Teneo, the private consulting company that Huma Abedin was also working for. And on top of that, the State Department, an official government business that Huma Abedin was doing while being paid by us, by the taxpayers, and while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State.
Well, I think what we need to highlight here, I read that email. I saw that where it shows Huma Abedin, don't forget, Hillary Clinton's aide, while at the State Department, asking for the State Department to agree to accept money from Congo and North Korea to, as you point out, repressive regimes that go into the Clinton Foundation. The question is how much more money that didn't have to go through, get approved by the State Department, came in from other repressive governments that went directly into the Clinton Foundation. Right. How much of that foundation is from repressive regimes, and what are they asking for?
When we don't know, and you're right to point that out. The reason why we're getting a snapshot here of some emails is that a conservative, we should point out, conservative activist David Bossie has filed a series of lawsuits, has won some of them, has gotten some documents turned over. That's why we're seeing some of these emails from the inside. We simply don't know what else was on that server that might tell us more about the Clinton Foundation, about all kinds of other subjects like Benghazi as well.
Eddie, I got to go. Next on the rundown, there's no love lost on the campaign trail between Jeb Bush and Donald Trump. A top political reporter will be here with the inside story up next. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, Donald Trump versus Jeb Bush. Now, there's no hiding the animosity between Bush and Trump on the campaign trail, as the Washington Post made very clear in this montage.
This is a guy who was a Democrat for most of the last decade.
For him to get things done is hard.
And if he was interested in a more comprehensive approach, he might want to read my book, Immigration Wars, which I published 4 years ago.
But I think Bush is an unhappy person. I don't think he has any energy, and I don't see how he can win.
You win when you connect with people about their aspirations, not about how great you are, how rich you are, how this you are, how that you are. That's not leadership.
He's weak on immigration. He's in favor of Common Core. How the hell can you vote for this guy?
So he's doing this to inflame and to incite and to draw attention, which seems to be his organizing principle of his campaign.
You know what's happening to Jeb's crowd, as you know, right down the street? They're sleeping. They're sleeping now.
I appreciate the fact that Mr. Trump now has a plan, if that's what it's called.
And when they give $5 million or $2 million or $1 million to Jeb, they have him just like a puppet.
We're going to win when we're hopeful and optimistic and big and broad rather than, you know, just angry all the time.
With us now from Los Angeles, the Washington Post national political reporter Robert Costa, who's been reporting on the Trump-Bush feud. So, Robert, why don't Trump and Jeb like each other?
Well, there have been moments of warmth between Trump and the Bush family. In 1988, Trump had a fundraiser for George H.W. Bush at the Plaza Hotel in New York. In 1997, Trump had a fundraiser for Jeb Bush, brought Jeb up to Trump Tower. But those have been countered by lots of fierce criticism from Trump. He went against Bush 41 on the no new taxes pledge, and he really broke with George W. Bush on the Iraq War. And ever since then, over the past decade, it's been pretty acrimonious.
So we had to go back 27 years to get the time that they actually got along. Money. So Jeb Bush is raising a lot of money. Donald Trump has a lot of money. Trump has poll numbers. Jeb is looking for poll numbers. How does this play out? How does the money factor play out?
The money factor's critical for Bush because though he's slipped in the polls, his campaign really believes because his super PAC is sitting out there with $100 million, when it comes crunch time, January and February of next year, he'll be able to go on the airwaves, perhaps attack Trump if necessary, at least tell the Jeb Bush story. Trump, however, doesn't feel like Jeb Bush's financial advantage matters too much. Because he goes on television so often, he doesn't think he needs to spend much money on television ads.
He's pretty right about that, but he also says he's quick to tell you he has a lot of money, and he does. But I got to tell you, to reach in your own pocket, that ain't as easy as it sounds.
Right, and this is something Trump's campaign is grappling with. I checked in with Trump and his advisors this week, and they said they're okay with these new super PACs starting up to try to help Trump, because if this campaign truly is moving toward the nomination, he's going to need grassroots efforts on the ground in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and he's eventually going to need some kind of television presence beyond the interviews. That's in motion, though he's a little bit behind some of the other more professional, operative-run campaigns.
Jeb Bush, I noticed, is kind of taking a different tack lately. He's attacking Donald Trump. I think he said on the stump this week, talking is not leadership, doing is leadership. Is this a new strategy, and what do you think of that strategy?
It is a new strategy, and I'll tell you one group that's happy with Jeb Bush's aggression, Bush donors. They wanted to see some fight from Jeb Bush. They see him getting pummeled by Trump day in, day out, and they're asking themselves, and they're telling the press, when's Bush going to really punch back? They like that Bush is doing that. However, there's a political risk, because if you go after Trump, look at Rick Perry, Lindsey Graham. They went after Trump, and they fell in the polls pretty sharply. So it's an uneven territory to go down.
So I interviewed Donald Trump, and I went through the list of candidates, and at the time, Jeb Bush was right there. I think he may have been ahead of Donald Trump, or right neck and neck. And I went through, when he got to Bush, I said, what's the one word you associate with Bush? And he said, low energy. And I scratched my head, like, low energy. What is he going for with this? And I noticed this has been it's been on his stump speech after speech. Jeb Bush, low energy. What does that mean?
There's actually a strategy behind the attack on Bush's low energy. Trump's people tell me that in 2008 and 2012, the one thing that really irritated conservatives is they didn't feel Senator McCain or Mitt Romney went hard enough after President Obama. They didn't think the aggression was there in the general election on some certain key issues. What Trump is signaling to conservative activists is, I will bring it to the Democratic nominee in a different way. I will be high energy in a way the other nominees, as you see it, have been low energy.
Gotcha. Very good piece, by the way, in the Washington Post. Thank you very much, Mr. Costa.
Thanks.
Plenty more ahead as the factor moves along this evening. The candidates who aren't Donald Trump vie for the spotlight. Also, Joe Biden isn't even in the race, but does he have Hillary Clinton on the ropes? We hope you stick around for those reports. In the Impact segment tonight, the GOP candidates out on the campaign trail trying to make a dent in Donald Trump's huge lead. For Governor Scott Walker, that meant attacking President Obama's Iran deal while touting his own national security bona fides.
See, unlike others, I don't need months or years to mull this over. I don't need to appoint a cabinet or consult a committee. Anybody who doesn't know today that the Iran deal is a bad deal is not ready to be commander-in-chief. I am ready to be commander-in-chief on day one.
They're also attacking Trump's policy proposals. With us now with more from Washington, D.C., Carl Cameron, Fox News chief political correspondent. Carl, how's the GOP feel dealing with Trump's dominance in the polls?
A lot of them are frustrated. A lot of them are trying to stay away from him. In the case of Ted Cruz, trying to embrace him. Chris Christie says he's a friend, but he doesn't necessarily agree with him. Jeb Bush today, in his event in Norfolk near the Naval Station, talking about vets, said it really isn't helpful to be calling somebody stupid or idiots, said that it doesn't offer anything relevant to any of the nation's problems and is counterproductive, and that was aimed squarely at Mr. Trump. Scott Walker today said he doesn't share the view that all the American leaders are corrupt and incompetent losers. Walker did also slam Bush. You know, that line a minute ago about having to consult cabinet leaders and others before deciding if the Iran nuke deal is a good or a bad one was aimed really at Jeb, who actually said that you might want to consider talking to your cabinet before just sort of an abject objection to it. And that was during the process where the details of the deal were just being resolved. So they're hitting back and forth. It's a question of, do you take on somebody like that? And obviously, Jeb Bush has been trying to do that, and Trump had a great week.
You're right. So these candidates have to figure out, do they take on Trump in this, you know, this big ship that's moving along, that's steaming along, or do you develop your own policy and put those out there? Now, Scott Walker wanted to hit on some foreign policy.
Sure.
What's the right answer? I mean, if I'm a viewer and I'm watching, I know what Trump has, we know that. I want to hear some specifics from Chris Christie, from Scott Walker, from Rand Paul.
Well, and so do people want to hear specifics from Mr. Trump. The reality is Trump continues to have huge crowds. He was out in Dubuque earlier this week. I was out there. 4,000 people. He had a great turnout. Lots of people from Wisconsin, which is a threat to the governor of Wisconsin, Dubuque being right on the border there. And Trump hit it out of the park repeatedly. And one of the things that's clear is that Jeb has decided that he's got to go after Mr. Trump. That was the same day that the whole Jorge Ramos flare-up with Trump took place. But 2 days later, the Quinnipiac poll comes out and shows that Trump has got a bigger lead than anybody else has ever had in the entire year. He's got organizers on the ground in Iowa. The people in his crowds in Iowa, the first caucus state, and in New Hampshire, increasingly are the real early primary voters. Now, it is still way too early to worry about polls and stuff like that in those early states. Folks don't make up their minds until the last week. But the fact that Trump's getting the activists in these early states is a very, very scary sign for people like Jeb Bush, John Kasich, and others who are looking at the early states first. Trump is able to go into Alabama and get 20,000, and in Iowa and New Hampshire he can get 5,000 or 6,000, and that's very, very rare.
But it's not. It may be too early for worrying about where the votes are coming from. But it's not too early to worry about the money. Now, the big donors. What do they want to see their guy, the Rubio donors, the Jeb Bush donors, the Chris Christie donors? What do they want to see their guy do? Or in the case of Carly Fiorina, their gal, do? They want to see them take on Trump or to develop their own campaign?
Well, there's a huge gamble in that. Developing one's own campaign in the shadow of Trump means you could just disappear into relative obscurity. There's another debate coming up in 3 weeks. 3 weeks from yesterday, as a matter of fact. It may be the last time it's a two-tiered debate. We could see the rest of the debates maybe being whittled considerably, particularly if Trump is holding virtually the rest of the field in single digits and he's in the high 20s. So he can't be treated as an unserious candidate. Jeb's doing exactly that. What the donors want is essentially people to call him out and talk about specifics. But he has proven himself a masterful speech maker with rhetoric that doesn't have a lot of substance to it. And truth be told, Eric, this early in the process, in August, when folks aren't paying attention, it'll kick up after Labor Day, and Labor Day comes late this year. But to put down a major white paper policy is very, very risky. If you talk about the economics of things now, with the way things have been on the markets and the way the numbers in the government change every couple of reports, the ground will shift under your feet as soon as you put out a policy. So Trump arguably is pretty cagey as a politician by talking about sort of half-expressed, very emotional rhetoric and getting people to sort of all hone in on what he's trying to say, but not literally saying in a journalistic sense or anything that causes you to say, oh, there's a campaign promise he's going to have a hard time keeping.
Right.
He doesn't do that.
Well, so you say it's very risky to put a policy proposal on paper right now because it's so early. However, the longer they wait, Trump continues to widen the gap between him and the rest of the field. I'm an athlete. We're losing the game. Granted, it's still the second quarter of the game, but we got to change our game plan, don't we?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you look back over the history, the candidates who've had leads at this point, which is just about the same time the Ames straw poll used to happen, everybody who won the straw poll, with the exception of George W. Bush in 2000, didn't get the nomination. So the people who were always sort of really hot right now tend to run the risk of either getting too high to the sun and burning out.
Was the money thing for a lot of them?
No, it's being sometimes too familiar with the early voters. Don't forget that Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, they are a cantankerous bunch. Iowa will vote for one person. New Hampshire, just for the hell of it, will vote for somebody else to keep it real.
Carl, Trump alluded to that at that speech that you were at, that you spoke of earlier. He said that. He said, I'm leading right now, but I want to win. So he's starting to think, is this too early to be peaking? He may change his strategy.
His rhetoric has gotten tighter. He has set pieces that he'll talk about, whether it's China is killing us, or why he thinks that Mexico is killing us, or what he would do about business inversions, or this sort of thing. He draws on them and keeps it fresh by putting the pieces in different order and ad-libbing all the time. But fundamentally, there is a political speech there that, while it might be not so rich on details, people are eating it up with a shovel.
Right. Carl, great stuff. Thank you. Straight ahead, sparks fly when O'Reilly pushes Trump for specifics on his big immigration plan. Be right back with that.
O'Reilly Factor, the #1 cable news show for 15 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us tonight for this O'Reilly Factor special, Election 2016. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. And in the Factor flashback segment tonight, O'Reilly and Trump, no spin.
Now, I have a very specific question. I need a specific answer. We all know you want the wall. We all know you want Mexico to pay for it. We all know that. But here's a scenario, okay? Illegal immigrant mother and father living in Los Angeles. 2 children who are American citizens born here. If you're president, do you order authorities to take that family into custody?
We have no choice. I'm sorry, Bill. We have to bring them out, and if they're wonderful people, which I'm sure they will be, and we have so many wonderful people, we'll bring them back in an expedited fashion. But we are a land of laws. We have borders. You said it. They're illegal immigrants. They're not supposed to be here. Mexico won't take them. You know, Mexico is the toughest there is almost in the world in terms of getting people to come in. They can't come in. You can't become a citizen of Mexico. They laugh at us. They can't believe the stupidity of the United States.
But
we have no choice. And we'll bring them back if they've done a good job. We bring them back, Bill.
Okay,
if they've done a good job, we bring them back.
I got the theory, all right? 2 American citizen kids, all right? You got 2 illegal alien parents. They're living in a house, a little house in the east side of Los Angeles. All of a sudden, ICE agents show up, all right, knock on the door and say, you have to come with us, put them in a van, bring them to a detention center. You're willing to do that?
Bill, I don't want to do it. I have a bigger heart than anybody running, but we have a country that's totally out of control. We have no laws anymore. We have no order. We don't even know how many people are in here illegally. We have to get a process started. If you
isn't there a better way than that kind of a confrontation?
Bill, let me just tell you something. You're asking me about illegal immigration. If it weren't for me, this whole session, there's all of these people that you're interviewing every night, they wouldn't even be talking about illegal immigration.
Listen,
it's a huge problem in this country.
No doubt about it. And there's
I
no doubt
brought it
about
up.
that.
I took a lot of heat for it. And Bill, I took a lot of heat for it, especially the first 2 weeks. And now everybody said you had Kate, beautiful Kate, just killed by this person that's disgusting that came here 5 times and probably was pushed over the border 5 times. We have no choice. You know, the gangs that you're talking about in Baltimore and in Chicago and in Ferguson and all this stuff, you know, many of those gangs are illegal immigrants. These are tough dudes. They would be, if I'm elected, they're going to be out of there day one. We're going to get them the hell out of our country.
And I don't
they
mind
shouldn't
that.
be here in the first place.
It's
and
the
they're
other,
going to be
it's
out
the other,
so
the
fast your head
law-abiding
will spin.
people with the American citizen kids. Now, Jeb Bush, probably the one that's running closest to you in most of the polls, was on the southern border and said this.
Mr. Trump's plans are not grounded in conservative principles. The simple fact is that his proposal is unrealistic. It will cost hundreds of billions of dollars. It will violate people's civil liberties. It will create friction with our third largest trading partner that's not necessary. And I think he's wrong about this.
And you say?
Well, he talks about civil liberties. We have illegal people that came in illegally. You tell me about civil liberties. We have to get them out. And some of these people are causing tremendous problems. All you have to do is look at the crime wave, number one. As far as Mexico being our third largest part, they are making a fortune. We're not making anything. Mexico's making a fortune because their leaders are smarter. They know what they're doing. Our people are grossly incompetent. Nabisco is now moving to Mexico. Ford is building a massive automobile plant in Mexico. They took a plant from Tennessee. It's going into Mexico. We're getting killed. So he can talk about, look, Jeb Bush is a nice person. He doesn't have the energy or the capacity to make our country great again. I've been saying this for a long time, Bill.
Do you have any theory about why the Chinese economy is collapsing? Do you have any knowledge of it at all?
Because it's funny money. They devalue their currency constantly in order to take our jobs and lots of other countries' jobs, frankly. They've done a pretty big number in Europe, too. Not as good as they've done to us. You know, I said the other day, this is the greatest theft in the history of America, with the money that they've taken out. We have rebuilt China, but now it's gotten to a point they've devalued their currency to take even more from us. And we have nobody that's competent. We have nobody that knows what's happening. We have nobody that knows how to handle China. And believe me, we have all the cards, but they've devalued to a point where they wanted to take even more money out, even more jobs out, increase, and all of a sudden they have a big, fat, beautiful balloon that is popping right now. But it's taking us with us.
Very briefly, say you're talking to somebody on the street and they go, Mr. Trump, I don't really understand what devalue the currency means. What does that mean to me?
They're cheapening their currency and they're making it very inexpensive. They will be able to make goods for far less than our goods. You know, we make great product, but it's impossible to compete when the product is so much more expensive.
All right, so
eventually what they're doing, though, leads to depression, Bill.
They're flooding money into,
eventually.
All right. So they got 1.5 billion people, and they're flooding money into the provinces around so that people don't starve because there's not enough legitimate business to support 1.5 billion people. So therefore, then when they pay us...
But Bill, the problem is they're taking the business from us. So they don't want their people to starve. We all agree with that. That's wonderful. But what they're doing is they want our people to starve. They're taking our business away.
I got it.
They've
but we're
taken our
letting
jobs
them.
away.
All right, you know, if U.S. companies, they go over there voluntarily because the labor is cheaper. But now the U.S. companies are being paid back with money that's not worth as much money as they made the deal. So they're getting hosed, aren't they?
Well, not only that, how about we owe them $1.4 trillion, and those dollars become strong? You know, the word strong dollar sounds good, but it's costing us a lot of money. There's some nice things about having a strong dollar, but there are some really bad things. And number one bad thing is we're not exporting anything. We are going to be in big trouble. It's getting worse and worse. And ultimately, the balloon is going to pop, and it's going to get very ugly. And you're starting to see the beginning of that.
All right, Donald. Always interesting to talk with you, and we appreciate your time very much tonight.
Up next, how big a factor is Joe Biden in Hillary Clinton's quest for the White House? The O'Reilly Factor Election 2016 special continues in a moment. The Biden factor, as the will he or won't he game continues, there are new reports that the Clinton campaign is trying to keep Joe Biden out of the presidential race. In a conference call with the DNC, Biden himself still seems to be undecided.
If I were to announce to run, I have to be able to commit to all of you that I would be able to give it my whole heart and my whole soul. And right now, both are pretty well banged up, and we're trying to figure out that issue.
Joining us now from Charlottesville with analysis, University of Virginia political scientist Larry Sabato, and from the Boston Globe newsroom, their political reporter James Pindell. Okay, Larry, let me begin with you. On top of the reports that Hillary's trying to keep Joe Biden out, there are also reports her campaign thinks it has an edge in getting delegates. They leaked that. What do you make of that? And is that part of a bigger strategy?
Well, they're clearly trying to keep him out. They don't want the incumbent vice president running against them because it means they'll have to devote a lot of time and attention and money and everything else to just beating Joe Biden. They'd rather put that on the general. But look, they do have an edge in delegates. Democrats are in love with these super delegates. They can be 20% or so of the convention. Clinton has been collecting them already. She's got 118 of the 232 Democratic members of Congress already pretty solidly behind her. They're all super delegates. So they do have an edge.
And so let me stay with you, Larry. So with this edge, and she puts it out there that we have them, is that a signal to Joe Biden saying, hey, don't even bother right now. I'm almost there. There's no bother wasting your time or your donors' money?
Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign don't want to come down hard on Biden. That would simply encourage him to get in. But what they're doing is sending subtle signals to him saying, Joe, look at this objectively. We're way ahead of you in money. We're way ahead of you in organization. We're already way ahead of you in delegates. Why would you want to go out this way?
Okay. So, James, Joe Biden met with Richard Trumka yesterday. Very interesting, the labor leader Trumka. He also met, and for me, very important, on a weekend, sat down with Elizabeth Warren, and people knew about this. What's that all about? What's he telling the world?
Look, he's trying to methodically figure out if there is a path to actually run a legitimate candidacy for president. And I think it's important to step back and recognize the moment we're in. Yes, the Joe Biden decision is the last remaining question mark of the 2016 race in terms of fundamentally changing up who's running and who's not. That is obviously the big question. But this is not 1991 when the world and all Democrats are waiting around to see if Mario Cuomo was going to run for president, right? He was both the liberal dream and the Democrat who polls said had the best chance of beating the Republican incumbent president. That's not what's happening right now. I mean, Joe Biden is your college safety school. Okay, if the first option doesn't work out, he'll be just fine. But if you want to look at all the polling, there isn't a single state where he's in the lead. In fact, most often
he hasn't even announced. I can't imagine how he's in the lead. Let's do it this way. I'll stay with you, James. What's better for Hillary Clinton? Look, there are people who say Hillary Clinton needs a credible, competitive candidate to run against to make her a better candidate, or is that all nonsense? That's just going to waste her money. Stay with you, James, first.
Well, clearly she'll be a better candidate if she's significantly challenged, but she does not want Joe Biden in this race. You know, before in the spring, we wondered whether or not he would take from the anti-Hillary vote or if he would actually take from the Hillary/establishment vote. Now we know, polling is pretty consistent, that he is the establishment candidate. And the moment that he gets in the race, now Democrats suddenly have another option. Right now they have an option with Hillary and a protest vote with Bernie. If Joe Biden were to get in the race, Democrats can now actually begin to wonder if they actually have a choice.
Larry, very importantly, a lot of this rhetoric going back and forth. Where are the Obamas? Where is President Obama as far as Hillary Clinton or Biden? It sounds like he is encouraging a Biden run.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think people had thought that Obama had resolved the matter, at least internally, and decided to, if not support Hillary, to do what he could for her behind the scenes. But that wasn't the message that came out from the White House a few days ago. In fact, the suggestion was made that Obama might even endorse at some point in the contest. Well, that certainly encourages Biden. It gives him hope. Having said that, I think the Obama White House would be just as happy if Biden didn't run. It really increases the pressure on Obama, and it potentially splits the Democratic Party in ways they don't want to see.
But Larry, for President Obama, with that grassroots, door-to-door organization that he had and probably still retains, that's a huge, huge plus for Joe Biden. Even though he hadn't done anything yet, that's a big jumping in point for him.
Well, Eric, it would be if Obama could transfer it to Biden, but I don't think that's possible. Some of it, a good deal of it actually, has already gone to Hillary Clinton. A lot of the staffers, a lot of the tools of the trade, and what hasn't gone to Hillary has mainly gone to Bernie Sanders. I don't think people are going to, call up Bernie and Hillary and say, hey, Joe Biden's just dropped in. I've decided to end my association with your campaign. That's just not going to happen.
James, one thought.
Outside of Delaware.
James, one thought. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump for a general election. How interesting would that get?
That'd be amazing. But I think the Bernie Sanders versus Trump is what we're really watching. And who wins Ohio? That would decide the election. Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump.
Larry, quick thought on this before we go. Trump, Biden.
Trump Biden, I think we'd have an instant book there, a book of gas, and they'd each contribute about half the book.
I can't imagine. We certainly have an abundance of material to work with. All right, guys, thank you very much. Great talking to both of you, Larry and James. Appreciate it. Next up, the candidates get the late night comedy treatment. That's moments away. We'll be right back. Tonight, take a look at late night host Jimmy Kimmel having some fun with a recent political word association poll.
This is interesting. They did a nationwide survey that found that when voters think of Donald Trump, the most common word that comes to mind is arrogant. When the same voters think of Hillary Clinton, the most common word they use is liar and truth. And when they think of
Ooh, the applause. Get it? Ouch. Also, please don't forget, now is a great time to become a BillO'Reilly.com premium member. When you sign up, you get any of Bill's books for free. That includes Bill's new book, Killing Reagan, which is out September 22nd. So be sure to check out BillO'Reilly.com. And that's it for us tonight. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly, who'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, be sure to catch my show Cashing In at 11:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow right here on FNC. And, of course, please remember, the spin stops here, because we're looking out for you.